Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, February 28th, 2022, and been looking at some of the chat before the show started. Folks, it's definitely one of those times where just tensions are high. People are worried. I get it. And today's broadcast kind of reflects that as well, echoes that, I should say. But the situation in Ukraine and Russia is getting a little bit scarier for everyone, I think, at this point. And of course, today there was a report released by the IPCC that is basically doing exactly what I predicted and been saying for years, and that is that MSM and AGW is hijacking grand solar minimum. And I'll get into that more here in a bit. Let's go into some space weather real quick. Our solar wind speed's coming in at 479.1 kilometers per second. So that is a low or moderate solar wind, I should say. Density around 2.3. Sunspot regions. Well, we've got 4 active regions now. We have the 2 in the northern part, and then you can see right there that are turning towards Earth in the southern region. There's 2 more active regions. Right now we are sitting at sunspot number 48. So we talked about this last night too. When we see the sunspots on the sun and you think, wow, that's not that much. And then you look at the smooth sunspot number for the whole entire active groups here, 48. And you divide that by 4, and that's a little over, what, 12 per 12 per active region, give or take. Folks, I'm here to tell you that those are solar minimum type sized sunspots. So we are not seeing an uptick in activity in the sun. We've had spurts of activity, or a short period of time of short bursts of activity, but we're not seeing that consistent flow yet that we would see of a max. Still a couple of years off from that, and it's showing when you still produce weak sunspots like what we're seeing right now. KPNC is at 2 with a 24-hour max of 3. Cosmic rays are staying steady at 6.4%. That's dropped down 0.3% over the last 48 hours. And again, we're still expecting possible G1 storm on or by March 1st. That'll be tomorrow. So we'll continue to monitor that. Let's jump over to the grandsolarminimum.com and check out the space weather section over there. All right. Oh, where's the screen? It's not there. Good stuff. Oh. Bear with me, folks. It's fun. Okay. There we go. All right. So here we are at thegrandsolarminimum.com, checking out some space weather stats. Looking at the KP indices has been moderate lately, nothing major to report. What about future sunspots coming our way? Well, let's take a look. And there is a pretty large active region in the northern part right now. It is near the negative 150, which technically that is about 4 days away from piercing the eastern limb of our star. Let's go ahead and get you an arrow here. To give you an idea, we've got sunspot number 48 and with all of this action right here. So when you see this, it's a lot more impressive, right? This is still technically the backside of the sun. And we talked about this last night as well, that there is a better magnetic connection, stronger output on the backside, because that is where the sun is focusing all of its energy on. And the reason why I say that, and I'll show you here, go back here to the terrestrial data. This right here. This is what I'm talking about when I say all the sun's focus is going to be on one side. What I'm saying by that is that everything that's on this plane right here, the sun's magnetic connection has to be stronger because there's more to connect to versus 1, 2, 3. And also, these 3 here are the closest to the sun. Now, it takes a lot more effort for that magnetic connection. And remember, the atmosphere here on Mars is really deteriorated. So that just tells you it doesn't have a magnetic, I don't think it has a magnetic field that protects like ours does. So again, there's more effort into supplying that connection from the sun. So I think when we see the backside, which is right over here where I'm pointing, I think that's because we're seeing stronger output because the sun has to focus more on the connection on this side versus this side. When Earth is all by themselves out here in this blue, and the four gas giants, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, I'm forgetting one, Saturn, yeah. They'll all be over here with Earth on this side, and Earth will be right here where my arrow is. So imagine this and the design of the USS Enterprise, basically, the two gas giants, will be tugging on the Earth in 2024, while the rest of the solar system is over here. So we're already heading into a grand solar minimum. 2024 is supposed to be the maximum that time in 2025. And what's so relevant about this is that I was talking out loud a couple shows back about the possibility that the reason why we still see extreme Arctic cold during solar max is because the sunspots, they move into a position at certain parts of the solar cycle. So right now, very beginning, we'll see groupings up here and groupings down here. And as the solar cycle progresses, these two lines are going to meet in the middle, and the cycle ends out like that. And then we go back to start where it goes blank, minimum, and then we start to see action in the north and then the south, and then we start to see that band. We're nowhere near that, obviously, right now. But my theory, say this large sunspot is directly Earth-facing during solar max or heading into the next minimum. So we all know that sunspots are cooler at that particular part of the sun's surface. So we also know that most sunspots would, on a scale of Earth to the sunspot, most sunspots would swallow Earth, if that's the way it worked. So we're already seeing the inconsistencies in the jet stream, the large sunspot that is directly facing Earth that is impacting the sun's output, and therefore creates disruptions in the polar vortex. And that's what happened. I referenced January 2014, living in Southwest Ohio. We had 3 different, Miles, you have something to say? I was getting to that. Yes, just give me a minute. So we had a temperature high of negative 23, and then, or I'm sorry, that was a low. And then the daytime high was negative 17. But it was January 2014, right? Well, that's when the peak of the max happened. And that's also the beginning of where we started winding this solar cycle down and moving into minimum. I'm babbling here, but my point I'm trying to make is that with the position of the Earth on these sunspots later in this minimum, or I'm sorry, solar cycle, as we head into the max, Earth-facing, direct-facing sunspots, on top of the fact that there is going to be a tug on Earth because of the 4 gas giants, Saturn, Jupiter, Uranus, and Neptune, are all going to be on this side of the sun with the Earth by themselves, and it's going to naturally create this tug, not a lot, but it's still going to pull the Earth away from the sun a little bit, enough to where it could affect global temperatures, not just regional temperatures, both south and northern hemisphere, extremes in both ways. So I know it's something that's going to happen in 2 years, but guys, I mean, some of you have been here since 2017, and it's flown by, in my opinion, is what I'm getting at. So we will see. Time will tell, and that's part of the problem too, is that time, and I've been saying this on our channel for many months now, that mainstream media wants to hijack events like this. Flood disaster in Queensland, New South Wales after a year's worth of rain in Australia. Folks, I can't give you the totals on this. This particular article doesn't actually give totals of the rainfall. It just says a year's worth. I'll do that research later and find out how much that really is. But it does tell me that we had 6.5 feet over most rivers that were flooded. So that's a pretty high flood waters there. Some videos you could check out on the Watchers. But what I'm worried about And I'm seeing it a lot more here lately. It's the advertising, the propaganda for climate change is becoming more and more by the day, it seems. And I've always said this, but I've warned you guys about the upcoming grand solar minimum, which is going to mean wild temperature swings, wild weather patterns, wavy jet streams, um, extreme rain events, and extreme snow events due to the cosmic radiation that's allowed in our atmosphere because of the weak magnetosphere. Highly charged particles interact with particulates and water vapor already in place in our atmosphere, and the highly charged particles are like steroids for the water vapor. And that's why we see these flood disasters like we're seeing here in Queensland and New South Wales. So it's everything that we've explained here on the science of why you're seeing these events. Now the mainstream and IPCC is going to hijack that. What do I mean? So as you all know, today is the release of the IPCC report. And of course, I wanted to use the Washington Post because we all hate them right now. I'm just kidding. But seriously, though, they always give the worst examples of the worst. And they are selling the fear, folks. I mean, selling the fear. All right. The latest report from the United Nations, IPCC, is warning to the world in a letter on a brink. A sweeping survey of the most advanced climate science on the planet. It recounts the effect rising temperatures are already having and projects the catastrophes that loom if humans fail to make swift and significant cuts to greenhouse gas emissions. So we're not even a paragraph and a half into the article, and it's already blaming you, folks, trying to guilt you, make you feel bad. In this more than 3,500 page document, Waste of Tree, is rife with devastating details about the toll of rising sea levels, scorching heat, escalating natural disasters. Here are the 5 key points from the report about what the world stands to lose and all that can still be savaged. Oh, Washington Post giving you that hope that we can be saving the planet because mankind, we're here, we're going to do it. We're going to save the planet. Okay. Number 1, a certain amount of suffering is inevitable, though adaptation can help. One of the things that we preach on Grand Solar Minimum channel, and some people have gave us flack for this because we don't bring out the Ice Age talk about this current grand. We do believe it's going to be a much cooler climate, but I'm not convinced yet that it's going to be a full-blown ice age or anything like that coming up in this next grand cycle. Could. A lot of things happening right now. But the one thing that we've always said, no matter what happens, we have to learn how to adapt. I mean, Adapt 2030. That's what this channel is all about, how to be self-suffice, survival of the fittest, but also teaching you those skills on how to adapt to a troubled climate that shows historically that we can correlate sun cycles with these bad weather events that we're seeing right now. And we can. We've done it. So now the IPCC is going to use words like adaptation. It gets better. Talking about the dying fishes and all this other stuff, that's all your fault. It's your fault that there's 14% of species facing a very high risk of extinction. It's your fault. Folks, do you know how many species of animals have been extinct from the beginning of time? It's in the millions. Okay? Unfortunately, it's just the way the life cycle goes. Things happen and they don't happen anymore. And it's all about adapting, right? And sometimes certain species can't adapt. Anyway, again, this goes back to last night's show titled The Arrogance of the AGW. And it shows right here in this ridiculous article. In the coming decade, temperatures and weather patterns will make some agricultural areas unsuitable for the crops that are currently grown. And then they blame sea level rise. That's what's going to cause it on the coastal communities. Annual deaths from climatic illness, such as extreme heat exposure, diarrheal disease, childhood malnutrition, are projected to increase by 250,000 within the next 30 years. Wow. Wow. So just in this one paragraph, he says the word adapt. He says the next 30 years. They also talk about child malnutrition due to crop loss because of the unsuitable conditions of growing crops. Folks, we do the farm report every spring, and it's going to be starting up here in a couple weeks. But every spring, we tell you the report, the conditions of the field, because we know that grand solar minimum in the past has shown that crop failure is the leading cause of famine during grand solar minimum. Yes, we are way more advanced as a civilization, absolutely, but we have a population that's over 7.5 billion higher than what we had back in the Maunder minimum. So that's more mouths to feed, more sick to get better, more people to treat, more people to take care of. It's a task. So even though we may be advanced as a civilization, it's still important to understand what's coming, not just because it's natural, but you need to learn certain things to survive and adapt to this situation. Starting your garden, get it going. Greenhouse, build one now, do it. Hurry. We don't have much more time for prepping. Some of us have already been doing this since 15. Some of them have been doing it since the early 2000s. And that's what channels like us are out here trying to do, is try to make people self-aware that we need to stop voting in politicians that blame you. The world is blaming everybody. And we've talked about this on other channels about New World Order and one government, one global government. And this is the way that they bully people into complying, because they want you to think that the sacrifice you're making on not using a lawnmower that's gas powered, you're saving the planet. Listen, there's a lot of naive people out there, okay? I was one of them for a while, all right? I know how easy it is to pull on the heartstrings. And everybody wants to do something right for the planet. Everybody wants to take care of our planet. We want to make cleaner emissions. We want cleaner drinking water, cleaner breathing air, okay? But what we don't want is unnecessary taxation and unnecessary price hikes in fossil fuels, because there is certain politicians who have an agenda to keep because they've got all this money invested in Green New Deal. The ball started rolling before they knew they could even get it going. And now they're in so deep with investments, this has to happen. That's why we're being force-fed the Build Back Better plan. And thank God for Joe Manchin. Because, folks, if he would be okay with this plan, you're going to see zero combustion engines by 2030. You're going to be paying a carbon tax credit based on the amount of energy you use in your home per year. You're going to pay more money for gasoline if you still have gas-powered engines. Then you're going to have to buy an electric car and incur the cost of replacing the main battery in that every 7 to 8 years, which is going to run you by then probably somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 to replace. So what's that say about the future of inflation? Well, that means everything is going to be super expensive in the next 10 years. Super expensive. We can count on it. But here we go. This IPCC report is playing dirty. They have mentioned everything in just this first paragraph that we focus on here on this channel, and that is grand solar minimum causes floods, causes droughts, causes crop failure, causes famine, and causes illnesses. We think it causes illnesses. There's got to be a strong connection between cosmic rays and deadly viruses. I mean, there's been several that's happened during solar minimums. So I'm not 100% saying that grand solar minimums cause death and disease, but there are a lot of different times that do line up for that. So it's a fair argument. I can say that anyway. Number two, that's right. Number one, we had like 4 things. Number two, every incremental increase in temperature will lead to dramatically more disease, death, frequent, costly disasters. Folks, the further we get into this grand solar minimum, the deeper the minimum gets, the weaker the magnetosphere gets, the more cosmic rays come into our atmosphere. we haven't seen anything yet on cosmic radiation exposure. That record will be broken during the minimum of solar cycle 25. I will bet the farm on that one, folks. Okay? If we have still flirting with high cosmic radiation dosage rates past the 3-year mark, when last minimum it was only for 2 years, we're still above 5%. We're at 6.4, holding steady. Each cycle has shown a deeper and deeper minimum, also indicating the grand solar minimum, which means the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 cycles could bring cooler conditions, more cosmic rays, more cloud coverage, more atmospheric rivers, more cyclone bombs. And guess what? The best news about this is that when we are seeing what we're seeing right now with La Nina and the possibility of La Nina falling into next fall into winter, it is going to decrease hurricanes. It should, anyway. When we have La Nina, there's more wind shear to interfere with these storms. And I'm telling you, we only had a couple that made landfall, and they were Cat 1s, Cat 2s, and then fluttered out. And folks, that has everything to do with La Nina. And right now, we're looking at a possibility of a third straight La Nina. They're saying possibly by the middle of the summer, we could see neutral conditions. But look, we've already started to see neutral conditions right around here. And now we're starting to see another cooling trend. So, we're supposed to be heading towards spring here, and we're starting to see more cooling and getting into a further deeper La Nina. And look, just a couple weeks ago, we were negative 0.5 something. Now we're at negative 0.8. We're almost back to a full degree below baseline, and we're heading into spring. And this also reminds me, too, that I saw a report today about the polar jet stream and how we are going to see a possibility of a sudden stratospheric warming situation. Here is a look at the North Atlantic temperatures. They are dropping. And I made this mention the other night about how GSM could save the AMOC from stopping its flow. We need colder temperatures. We need more ice, because the more heat we get, the more fresh water that interrupts the salt water, and that disrupts the conveyor belt, which would cause an abrupt climate shift. So these are what we need to see. Now, again, Northern Hemisphere, this is not the time we start seeing a cooling trend, but we are right now. We're almost at baseline heading into the first day of March. But again, like I said, the IPCC, Washington Post, they are hijacking everything that we teach here about the grand solar minimum. Climate change is battering the places and populations least able to adapt, and that is all but certain to continue. And yes, the gap between the rich and the poor will likely widen as the world war. Of course, they want to blame a warming planet on the reason why people are so poor. I'll tell you why this world is so poor. Because of corporate greed. Inflation my ass. McDonald's pulled in $21 billion in revenue last year, but their prices went through the roof. You want to go eat at McDonald's if you want diarrhea the next day? Hey, that's your choice, but that's going to cost you $25 if you're taking you and your special lady on a special night date, $25 for diarrhea. Used to only cost $15 for diarrhea. Goes on to talk about past decades, this and that, blah, blah, blah. But so far, they're saying everything that we're saying here. Here's another one. Global warming is wreaking havoc on plants and wildlife. Well, no crap. By shifting seasonal weather patterns and intensifying disruptive disasters, human-caused warming imperils almost all forms on life on Earth. Again, they are making you feel guilty. There's threats to biodiversity also hurt humans who depend on ecosystems to provide food and clean water and air. By weakening wildlife population, damaging habitats, climate change increase the chance of disease jumping from animals to people. Oh, okay. So again, it's your fault COVID happened, right? Because that's what they say. COVID jumped from a bat to a person. It's your fault. Global warming did it. So global warming is responsible for the snow, the ice, the cold, the warm, the hot, the heat wave, the droughts, the floods, the disease, the sick, and the crop loss. It's all global warming, according to IPCC and Washington Post. For many locations on Earth, the capacity for adaptation is already significantly limited. Well, no shit. You can't live in the Sahara Desert, right? You can't live in the Antarctica in the dead of winter. No. There already are parts of this world that are uninhabitable. By you saying this limited is speaking of what's already here to begin with. We already have limited critical areas that are not inhabitable. That already exists. No proof, no maps, no examples, no numbers, just more blah, blah, blah. That is what you get from the trash rag over there at Washington Post. Selling you fear, baby. Selling you fear. Look at this, though. This is hilarious. UN predicts disaster of global warming not checked. Oh, June 29th, 1989? A senior UN environment official says entire nations could be wiped off the face of the earth by rising sea levels if global warming trend is not reversed by the year 2000. Wow. So it's not just AOC. This started in the 80s because we needed a way to make money off the people. Taxes weren't getting it done. Corporate greed was starting to really build in the mid 80s. A lot of corrupt stuff going on in our government, mafia stuff, who knows. But now they wanted to find maybe someone had a guilty conscience. Like let's do something a little more honest. Let's blame everybody for global warming. Well, we got the stats to prove it because they knew that we were in a warming part of a natural cycle right before we get into a cooling trend. They knew this. UN scientists, all of them know this. Okay. But this is a world conjured up plan between all the governments. The United Nations is in on this too. And this is a development of a slush fund for the New World Order. Everything Green New Deal. Slush fund. There's no proof in that article about climate change being caused by humans. Now, here is the 36-page. Actually, you know what? I'm sure you guys are going to want this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in the chat for you. If I can do that. No, I can't. All right, maybe Mari's in here. Maybe she could find this. I'll the link to this report. Yeah, the 37-page report. I did. I think I did. Yeah, so just put it in the description if you don't mind, Mari. Thank you, my trusty sidekick there. But here is the beginning of it. All the credits, all the people. Here's the table of contents. Observed impacts from climate change, vulnerability and exposure of ecosystems and people. Risk in the near term, mid to long range risks, complex compound cascading risks. Risk. Current adaptation, future adaptation, limits to adaptation, avoiding maladaptation, enabling conditions, conditions for climate resilient development. A lot of arrogance in this, a lot of arrogance. I'm not going to read you the report, guys, but I just wanted to skim through it to show you. I thought these were like going to be like peer-reviewed numbers, mathematic problems. These are just fancy little graphs. They're cute. They're so adorable. Anyway, no real information there. No links to any peer-reviewed papers that's discussing anything in these. Now, this is called a summary for policymakers. So the UN, the New World Order government, has approved this summary for all you monkeys out there who I control on a string. And this is written in a language where it's supposed to be a shock and awe for the average citizen. This looks pretty serious, guys. But so did that headline in 1989. And people are like, the year 2000, well, that's in the future. That's never going to happen. And here we are, 2022, and we're still here. There is no global warming. There is no sea rise that's tearing apart our coast anywhere in the United States at all. In fact, sea level rise is no more than 1/8 of an inch per year, if at all. But if sea level rise is real and that's going to kill us in 10 to 12 years, then tell me, why did Barack Obama buy a mansion that is about a mile away from the ocean? Why would you do that when you're over here championing climate change and global warming and reducing CO2 emissions? Anyway, so we'll put the link in the chat. I'll let you guys take a look at this. But again, the IPCC is hijacking the information of what's going to happen during a grand solar minimum and calling it global warming and blaming you. And then articles like this from the Washington Post are trying to scare the shit out of you. Yeah, this was the breaking news that I woke up to. UN panel grim climate change report. Parts of the planet will become uninhabitable. I put straight up bullshit. That's what it is. Sorry for the language today, guys. It's frustrating to continue to have to try to talk around this nonsense, because this is stuff that we've been talking about for years here at this channel. We've told you how it happens, how it's going to happen. And because there's so many brainwashed sheeple out there, these types of stories will scare the hell out of everybody, and they will comply to these new policies. I think I found the cure for global warming, though. I think this is what we need to do. This might work. It fixed COVID, right? Okay. And I wanted to show you this. This is why renewables are so cheap. This is basically, and thank you, Tom Leeds, by the way, who shared this on Facebook earlier today. But this is U.S. federal subsidies per megawatt hour between 2010 and 2019. If you ever wonder why people claim that renewable energy is cheap, here's why. $31 per megawatt is paid for in tax credits, direct taxpayer funds, and research and development. Now, you see oil, hydro, coal, other renewables, and nuclear, they get the minor investments. None of our tax dollars go to this, surprisingly. But look at wind and look at solar. What are you going to do when the government stops these subsidies and these tax breaks? Then what? The government's not paying for it all. Somebody's got to pay for it, right? Guess who? You do. And the ones who voted in these Democrats to control the Green New Deal policies, thank you for not being open with yourself and to look at real facts and real data about climate, about science, and how expensive and how this whole Green New Deal climate change stuff, they're working so hard to protect the lie because it's the livelihood of the elites. Meanwhile, people like me and you get laughed at because we're not consensus science. We're not part of that 79 climate scientists that thought that humans cause global warming. Out of the 3,200 respondents, we're not one of the 79. So that makes us a minority? Huh? Again, nobody here is denying climate change. We are going through climate change. It's called the grand solar minimum, and it's going to impact us for the next 3 to 4 decades. And I say 4 decades because it may take a minute to come out of this deep solar minimum. This is, after all, a grand cycle. So, sorry for the language, but frustrated tonight because I've been saying it, warning people about it, how mainstream is going to hijack the grand solar minimum and try to paint this narrative that it's your fault. And we're going to charge you a bunch of money because it's your fault. Not much really changing here, folks, on the forecast over the next few days. I know we didn't get a chance to really see a lot. The maps weren't working that well. A little bit of Alberta Clippers by Wednesday in the Northeast, some snow in the northern plain states. An atmospheric river is approaching. Well, they're doing it again. I guess I'm just going to have to go to tropical tidbits, folks. because that's been happening quite a bit on the weather street. So I tried to give them a chance, but oh well. So here we go. Wednesday, March 2nd, we have an extreme atmospheric river event happening in the Northwest Pacific. That's what I read today, okay? Extreme. Let's look at how many days this actually is. March 1st, March 2nd, March 3rd. That's pretty significant. March 4th, it finally starts to move away. So a 4-day atmosphere, that is extreme. That's pretty extreme. So Northwest Pacific is going to be the pretty much the weather headlines for this first week of March. Some light snow going across the northern plain states into the Great Lakes and the Northeast, but this is light stuff, guys. No accumulation expected. Maybe some heavier snow in Canada. Another system developing far to the north, affecting the northern plain states, but bringing rain to the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. Start as it snows, but this is going to be a ridge and fridge. And you can see the yin and yang, the warm air over here and the cold air over here. I mean, this is about as wavy as a jet stream as you can get, folks. Here's the warmer air over here. The colder air is all over here, almost like a yin and yang. Perfect. But this is for, I believe, March 6th, I think. Yeah, March 6th. So big storm there, probably another thaw here for the Northeast. More rain on the way, snow staying in the northern plains and into Canada. So by March 8th, those of us who just received a foot of snow or less will probably have no snow on the ground. Temperatures will be in the 40s. We'll get the rain. We will see some melt once again. Now, interesting system developing here on March 9th into the 10th. That's right. Could bring another batch of winter weather here for the Northeast. Right now, it looks like it's tracking away. But this coincides with the report that I read about the sudden stratospheric warming event that is possible to take place in mid-March and would impact the United States and the UK with winter-like conditions, a cold blast attacking the lower 48, especially as deep as possibly Texas, like we saw in February of last year. Now, right now, it's not a for sure thing, but it is a wait-and-see type situation, and usually when you see these types of articles popping up, it's not because there's a hunch. It's because there's a pretty good chance that the polar jet stream is going to weaken significantly and allowing shots of cold, sharp blasts of Arctic air. And right here we see it trying to make the lower 48 by the first week of March. Stays in Canada. There's that yin and yang cold and warm front right here on the 7th into the 6th. Cold front trying to advance itself, but the warm air is really starting to get a little bit more strengthened in the south, keeping things pretty mild for the Ohio Valley and the Northeast for the most part. I'll take 47 degrees in March. It's about right. But there is the Arctic cold blast that we are worried about and watching and possibly could see dip pretty far south. And that's a big batch of Arctic cold air for this late in March. So we will keep our eyes on this situation in the coming days because, again, we talked about this being reverse spring. And so far, I feel like we've seen a couple of thaws, and that's going to trick us into feeling like maybe that we're finally over the hump with winter. And then we get blasted at the end of March. Again, we were in like a lamb this year on winter. Winter got started very slow. So I would not be shocked to see some pretty major storms into late March into early April. Would not be surprised. All right, I'm going to say hello to a few folks out there tonight. Cuban Mama, hello, how you doing? Jerome from Rochester, Revolutionary Liberation, good to see you. J-Dog, hello. Shirley Davis, also good to see you. I saw Patricia Clayton earlier. Rhea, thank you for your comments. Pizza Hut Thinker, good to see you. Jesse Vorwald, our farmer friend up in Wisconsin. Randy Willis from Eastern Tennessee, nice to have you on the show tonight. Thank you for tuning in. Mark Lambert, good to see you out there as well, and a lot more new faces, people that I don't recognize, but I do appreciate your support tonight and joining us on this latest update. Also, if you like what you see tonight, we have links in the description of the video. Check out our Teespring store for Grand Solar Minimum shirts, hats, hoodies, you name it, we got it. If you really want to be a long-term supporter of the channel, go to our Patreon channel and subscribe for $1 a month. Lots of big things coming in the future, but we can't do those big things until we start getting a little bit more support from our Patreon people. So $1 a month, we have thousands of subscribers on YouTube. If we can just transition some of those over to Patreon, what that's going to allow us to do is stream video from our website. So people will go to thegrandsolarminimum.com and hold on, there's no membership fee to the website. You just go to our website. There'll be a section for all of our broadcasts, and there'll be a chat. Everybody's going to be able to have a chat, watch the video. No worries about YouTube shutting us down. No worries about what we can say in the chat, what we can't say in the chat. Don't have to worry about being censored. We're on a private server for our website anyway. So that's the kind of things that Mari and I want to do because we feel like the information is very, very crucial. And I don't think we have a lot of time left on mainstream media platforms such as Twitter, such as YouTube, Rumble. I really am worried about the future, about how we get this information out, because as we get deeper into this minimum, we're going to be able to show the correlation of what's happening. And the powers that be, the New World Order, are just going to want to focus on keeping the global warming narrative running. So, but yes, if you guys like what we do, check us out at Patreon, Teespring, give us a one-time donation. Either way, it is greatly supported, and we greatly appreciate it. Everybody, stay safe out there, and pray for the Ukraine as well. And we'll do another show tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. That's 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We'll do another Grand Solar Minimum News update. Until next time, we will talk soon, everybody. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.